Good morning. Today is Sunday, July 5th, and on the topic list for today, music from the Barnhouse Portfolio, reading instead of scrolling, particularly inspired by a couple of recent episodes from the Cal Newport podcast. Graced response to grace, and substack. So, my name is Andrew. I'm a composer and a conductor. I'm an essayist on paper here on YouTube. I work at a large financial services institution, and I'm a student at Wesley Theological Seminary. So let's get started. All right, in the pipe today, Terry Cavendish. Smoked from my Missouri Meerschaum corncob, which I love. I would love it even if it didn't cost $9. I love the color of the stem. I love the shape of the pipe. I love it. And the music today, when things slow down and I mix in some music, the music is from the Barnhouse Portfolio, which is a short story I wrote a few years ago. And I'm currently recording it. Along the way, throughout the story, it's heavily footnoted. I like that style where there's narrative and then a footnote that kind of runs in parallel to the story. And one of the footnotes refers to a series of tracks that I wrote to go along with it that represent actually one of the narrative elements. So the idea is that there's a musical construct within the story, an important one, actually an important narrative element, which you will see if you either go download the PDF or listen to the MP3, which I may be done with before this goes up. If not, it'll be next week. So when things slow down here, like when I'm mussing around with my pipe or staring off into space thoughtfully, I will mix in some music. And you can download that music on Bandcamp. Barnhouse is a character from one of Kurt Vonnegut's early short stories. And he uncovers a technique of disarming all weaponry. So he has to vanish. It's a very short story, but a very meaningful one. And my short story picks up at the end of that and posits that the author of the story has actually encountered Barnhouse and has picked up the project, so to speak. And without spoiling the story, the author of the story decides that he has figured out how to write music that will cultivate a different attitude. And he tries different ways of disseminating this. The first of which I think is quite delightful is that the author purchases thousands of copies of a Lionel Richie album, and then with his own lathe press embeds the music over the track that otherwise would have been Hello, and then surreptitiously places these in used record stores. But that distribution mechanism turns out not to be very successful, so the short story and the music along with it in the construct of the story is the next mechanism of distributing the music. So you can check it out for yourself. I like the story a lot. I particularly like the end of the story, where there's just a list of things that will happen if this music has properly circulated. If the music of the Barnhouse Portfolio and psychodynamism turns out to be effective, here are some of the things that you'll see. And I quite like that list. It can stand on its own. So that's the Barnhouse Portfolio. I started to read instead of scroll. So one of the things, it's a terrible habit I have. So I'll be at my desk working, right? So I'll have my work laptop up and running, and I'll have my iPhone next to my work. And if I'm bored or anxious or just switching between tasks at work, I'll pick up my iPhone and check my own mail, my own messages. But I find I sometimes even check my work email on my phone. It's like such a deleterious tick. It's a habit. Okay, so what I'm doing instead, when that urge to pick up the phone comes, first I placed it so it's harder to get to. But that instinct means something. The urge to do something is there, and I want to replace it. I don't just want to I want to replace it. So I have a Bible next to me, and I open it to one of the Psalms. And at the same time, I'm trying to memorize. So I'm replacing the algorithmic urge. And remember, it's not a sign of weakness to be defeated by this technology, because companies have spent decades and billions of dollars figuring out a way to take natural human instincts, the desire to know things, the desire to communicate, the desire to entertain yourself, and turn it into what I think is a really negative part. There's nothing good about it. It's very good to be able to find things out and search them and Google. It's terrible to have the slightest idea of a question and then to immediately look for it. It's a broken circuit. So reading instead of scrolling, noting questions. I have a little notebook. If I have a question, or I think of something that I want to buy, I write it down. I can look up anything I want. I can buy anything I want. The only requirement is that I've written it down first. So Cal Newport talks about deregulation of dopamine. And I'm with him on this. I notice that it takes time for the brain to settle back down. And it doesn't take very long to get it out of whack again. Like I can spend 3 or 4 days really being healthily connected to technology. And then spend an afternoon scrolling YouTube videos, and it's almost like I'm hungover the next day. You know, our daughter went to a Waldorf school, and through grade 5, I was saying, no TV. No TV. When was this? This would have been in the early 2000s. So the internet was around, but it was before the iPhone. Well, the interesting thing was the teacher would say they could tell if a student had watched TV the night before. Their demeanor was different, and I believe it. Deregulation of dopamine. I mentioned a few weeks ago that I'd been getting a string of tarot cards all in the same suit, the swords, which is the suit of mental activity. And I was, more than that, I was getting card after card of the odd-numbered swords, which are the out-of-balance cards. And it lines up with sort of a general sense of anxiety and disequilibrium. But I noticed, as I've been implementing some of these practices, reading a psalm, memorizing a psalm instead of picking up my phone, writing something down before I search for it, I drew a different card, still a sword, but it was the Queen of Swords, which is a much more articulate card, right? The Queen has her power embedded and is focused and directed. It's a very good card. So the other part of this that comes from Cal Newport, at least I've got it from Cal Newport, is the idea of landlining your cell phone. So again, the cell phone, look, it's wonderful. I'm using my cell phone to record this. I'm dependent on rideshare, so I don't drive, and if I need to go somewhere, I'll use rideshare. But I don't need to have my phone with me when I'm around the house, do I? So landlining is just plug it in somewhere. Plug it in the kitchen. I actually have it plugged in at my work desk, because one of the things that I absolutely do need my phone for is dual-factor authentication with my work laptop when I'm working from home. But other than that, what happens if I just leave it there? Next week I'll talk more about the ecosystem that I'm building up. I don't need my phone for an alarm because I have a separate alarm clock. I don't need it for text or even really for my calendar because I have an Apple Watch. And when I'm in the house, it's telling me everything that my phone could do. So the only reason I'm walking around with a phone in my pocket or in my hand is because I'm addicted to the algorithm. The algorithm has sunk its claws into me. So I landline it. And what I am then measuring, because it's good to have a metric, right? Screen time is okay. Screen time is all right. But, you know, if I listen to a podcast, that shows up as screen time. So I want that to come down as well, because I want to use dedicated tools rather than my phone. The metric that is most revealing, I think, is the number of pickups. I looked at this and was ashamed. I had days where I had more than 200 pickups, starting as early as 3 o'clock in the morning. But even assuming that then I stop at 9 o'clock at night, 200 pickups, that's like every 3 minutes. That's what I mean by evil. Total distraction. Evil is not equal to distraction. Distraction let's talk about this for a minute. Distraction enables a misinterpretation of the nature of humanity. Distraction turns you away from God. Distraction cultivates the soil in a way. It allows for the weeds. If we go back to the parable from that we talked about last week, if you are distracted, the soil is always being cultivated. Your mind is always being shaped. You are always being formed. But if you're distracted, you are being formed by random actions in the environment or by the deliberate actions of the algorithm. And I can't think of a better metric than that, than the fact that every 3 minutes I pick my stupid phone up. And what am I doing? Like I say, in some cases, I'm checking the same email account that I just looked at on my laptop. It's crazy. Not a sponsor, but they should be. I really like this Partake NA beer. All right, today it's July 5th. All right, let's shift gears for a minute. Creative ideas. It's easy for the creative act to be glommed onto by the ego, right? To say things like, I am a writer, I have written this, listen to my music. Come to hear my performance. There's my audience. Look how famous I have become because of my music. And all of that is rotten to the core. Partly because that ego is unreal. And I don't mean that it doesn't exist. The idea of a concrete ego, the self that is the experiencer of experience, is a constraint on what we actually are as human beings. So when I say things like my music, before we even get to what the creative idea is, you have to challenge the idea of my. Right? We sit here, breath, we observe, we pay attention, and then we turn the attention on the self. And that self is not anything more than the current accumulation of experience, external input, the outcome of previous action, activity, narrative, stories, deeply held convictions. But all of those will evaporate. The thought itself will not persist without energy applied to it. And the ego is another complicated, meaningful set of thoughts. The ego survives, it persists, because I put constant energy. Whether that's anger, that anger is very good at keeping a profound sense of self going. But so is anxiety, so are all of the emotions. It doesn't mean that they're unreal, but let's put them in the proper perspective. Let's recognize that these are like a weather system. I've heard Joseph Goldstein say this. If you think about a hurricane is named. We talk about Hurricane Andrew. Okay, but what is the hurricane? Is it the wind? Is it the water? Is it the damage it's doing? Is it the same here as it is there? Is it the same now as it was an hour ago? Where does the hurricane end? Where does it... We talk about the eye of the hurricane, but where does that stay? And so when we think about our emotions and our guiding thoughts, we have to think of them as like a weather front that is very real in its moment, but let's not say that this is going to stay like this forever, that it is anything more than the current articulation of a set of experiences. Yeah? So within that, I write music, or I write essays. You might be a poet, or a sculptor, or other kind of artist. We end up with an artifact that lands with some weight into that mix. It is, in its own way, a concretization of a particular array of experiences. But it is no more permanent than the self that produced it. So, we have the ever-changing, impermanent self. We have the work of art that is a temporarily glued together experience in sound or sensation or visual experience. And what we have to do is ensure. Hang on. Hey, come here. Come on. Come on, good boy. Sit down. Very noisy today. What we have to do is make sure that the thing that is driving that momentary concretization of the aesthetic artifact is liturgical. That it is pointing not back to the ego, but out and up to the divine, to God. That it either glorifies or delights God. And if it doesn't do that, if what it's doing is temporarily improving my sense of self, then I want no part of it. And that's hard-earned wisdom, right? I'm 58 years old. 30 years ago, I was a graduate student in music composition. And in the years leading up to that, I thought that getting a PhD, which I didn't actually manage to finish, but getting a PhD would mean I was a composer. Not finishing that degree for a while made me feel like I wasn't a composer. And then constantly feeling diminished or belittled, all of which is entirely untrue. Now, that doesn't mean that my craft as a composer couldn't be better, right? That there is work to be done to improve the skills, the same way that if I want to run fast, I need to work out, train. If my running is to delight the Lord, because he made me fast, which he didn't. He made me slow. But he did make me a writer. So I have an obligation to train myself to be able to take the idea that is not from me and to turn it into a piece, an artifact. I talked last week about how a composer really only has one piece in them, one idea, and then as my craft changes, my ability to realize that idea changes. Anyway, I was reading about Michael Jackson because there's a movie out, a biopic about Michael Jackson that I think I'm going to go see. And I came across a video, or a reference, rather, an interview where what he said was he will wake his team up at any time of the night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Come to the studio now. There's an idea. We need to work on an idea. And then what he said was, I need to get that idea down or else God will give it to Prince. So I love everything about that. I love the idea that there's a gift, an idea. The artist has a moment to respond to it, a graced response to grace, turn it into an artifact, or someone else will do it. I don't know if that's really how it works. I don't know if God is out there doling out ideas, but the idea that those ideas are not our own. What is mine, what is yours, is our ability to respond without being distracted and without being obscured by our negative emotions. Graced, a graced response to the grace of a gifted idea. All right. I think that's good for today. I'm finishing a substack article. It takes me too long to write Substack. Partly because I'll let months go by. But even when I've determined to write 1,000 words, it takes me a week or two to get what I want. So I'm trying to be more regular with Substack. I've got a series out there right now about Whitman and psychogeography. I try to get one of those out in the next couple of days. Perhaps while I'm editing this, I'll finish that. We'll see about the Barnhouse. If that's not this week, you'll get it next week. Yeah, that's pretty good. Also, in the next couple of weeks, I hope to have my Patreon site up. More to come on that for the ensemble. But look, I hope you are dealing with the heat. It's a tad cooler today, but like much of the country, much of the world, we're under a heat dome here in Pittsburgh, and it's horribly hot. It's a little bit cooler today. Might only be about 85 or 90 right now. I know some of you have been suffering in extreme heat, and it's not good. It's not good indeed. Anyway, please subscribe. If you've made it this far, you have to subscribe if you aren't already. And if you already are subscribed, to find one more person who might be interested in this channel, these weekly readouts, and then a couple of shorter videos through the week on different topics. So with that, keep your wits about you.